The soldier teacher goes on to describe what the Filipino kids identify as a pusa. Then the Americano teaches them how to spell cat. For the children whose fathers were in hiding, and for whom that soldier was a mortal enemy, the Americano was apples and blue eyes and English. And how resist an enemy who carried a gun in one hand and a primer in the other?
Do you see the cat? Does the cat see?
The charm of the scene would become sentiment. We love you, Mother America. And the haze of sentiment would become so thick, nobody saw the cat. And the cat got away with free trade, which Filipinos had resisted as bad for their industry and bad for their business. Piedmont cigarettes at 4 centavos a pack of 10. Chesterfield and Camel cigarettes at 10 centavos a pack of 20. Baby Ruth chocolate candies at 5 centavos a bar. Hollywood movies at a peseta a ticket. And canned goods, cold meats, hot dogs, Stetson hats, textiles, shoes, hardware, automobiles, roofing, cement and steel, and all the other trimmings of the American way of life, all imported and all cheap. But they were cheap because they entered our country duty-free, to our economic ruin.
They were essentially discouraging us from producing those goods which could be competitive with the mainland products. So it was a relationship, a paternalistic relationship, if you wish, where the apron strings were very strong. It really didn't teach us very much, and it in fact spoiled us a lot.
In a tobacco land, why bother to produce our own cigarettes when Piedmont and Chesterfields could be bought cheap? In a sugar land, why manufacture candies when Baby Ruths were richer and cheaper? We were not only mortgaging our future, we were developing the fatal cultural conflict between local and Blue Seal, between local and genuine. More progress in 30 years under America than in 300 years under Spain. And what was that progress? We became, under America, the captive market for Campbell's soup, Colgate toothpaste, Frigidaire refrigerator, the Saturday Evening Post, the Ford and the Studebaker and Mongol pencils, not to mention chewing gum.
While the Spaniards was worried about our souls, the Americans worried about our stomach, economics. That's why they began our education with A is for apples.
Unfair. The real progress was made upstairs, in the head, not downstairs in the body.
It fell to earth, I know not where.
For spacious skies, for amber waves.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth upon this continent.
Philippines, my Philippines.
What is our national flower? Sampaguita, maliliit. What is our national bird? Maya, maliliit. Who is our national hero? Si Rizal, maliit. Ang liit-liit ng tradition mo, wala kang ipagmamalaki. There are only 3 things that you can re-engineer this. If you are a colonizer, I think I'll do that also. Destroy the people's identity to their heritage. Do not make them proud of their heritage. They'll never be committed to make that heritage big.
Civil government was established in the Philippines on July 4th, 1901. Out went the likes of General Arthur MacArthur, model of martial law, and in came William Howard Taft, the first of a long line of American governors general to occupy Malacanang. Our little brown brothers, said Governor Taft, and he assured the world that Filipinos were now embracing American rule with gusto. But on September 28th, 1901, an American detachment of 74 troops were massacred in the Samar town of Balangiga. In reprisal, the Americans turned Samar into a howling wilderness, killing, burning, and taking no prisoners. So back into the Americans' bad book went the Filipino. He may be a brother of Governor Taft, but he ain't no friend of mine, howled the gringo soldier. But the government of the United States in the Philippine Islands still insisted that the country was at peace and its people most cooperative. However, one American observer, James Blount, decried his countrymen's systematic efforts to conceal the continuing native resistance. A short time after the civil government was instituted, said Blount, the insurrection got its second wind. This second wind of the revolution has been muffled for us by the American uproar against this movement of outlaws and fanatics. Who were leading these neo-Katipunan revolts? Cooks, janitors, barbers, the most vicious of the lower classes. Or, if not the riffraff, then the psychotic, the crazies.
Ako ang anak ng Diyos. Ako ang Santo Papa.
Ako ang Birheng Maria.
Ako ang Birheng Maria.
Ako ang itim na Nazareno.
The Americans, however, found this no laughing matter. In Pampanga, a miracle man called Apo Ipe launched a rebellion that became known as the Santa Iglesia, which bedeviled American camps all over the Central Plain. In Laguna and Tayabas arose a Pope Rios, who organized an army to drive away the Americans. They hanged him for his audacity.
A very important element of these messianic movements, katulad nung kay Papa Issue, yung Polahanes, is yung paniniwala na ang bayang Pilipino kailangan maging malaya. Pwede nating sabihin na yung Republika ng Malolos ang nakapagbigay ng inspirasyon. Yung parang split second na, uy, ito nga pala ang dapat naming adhikain, no? Na hindi nauunawaan na meron na silang kaharap na mas malaki, mas malakas, mas makapangyarihang kalaban.
But after some 2 decades, peace at last between Americans and Filipinos. Peace and a growing affection. We finally joined the Americans in enjoying what they hailed as their empire days. The public schools, the civil service of the insular government, the pensionados returning from treasured sojourns in the United States, the Jones Act that gave us a purely Filipino legislature and gave us back our flag. All this helped us to accept not only American rule, but with it, American culture.
And I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, was it heaven bless me? What a blessing no one knows.
Americanization, you can see, is really focused on the upper classes and those who studied, who had begun to have ambitions of becoming American. But the basic masses, thankfully, were not quote-unquote educated enough to be miseducated.
We know you love your land of liberty. We know you love your...
That was 1914 and the First World War. And manifesting our new attitude towards America was the Filipino volunteer brigade we organized when the United States joined the war. Our volunteers never saw action in Europe, but at least one Filipino, Tomas Claudio, died in France fighting for the Stars and Stripes.
But there's one rose that dies not in Picardy.
That was 1916, and the Jones Act. Sergio Osmeña, Speaker of the House, was kingpin, as attested by his office, the Ayuntamiento, a superb marble hall, Manuel L. Quezon, President of the Senate, was number 2, as shown by his office, the bodega-like intendencia.
Ang nangyari dito ay meron kang tinatawag na wardship or guardianship or kaya godfather kind of complex sa politika natin. Meron tayong mga malalaking tao. And it helped na sa kaso halimbawa ni Quezon, mukhang mistiso pa nga no? Kaya meron kang white father, white uncle, yung complex na yan ay nandyan. At ang karamihan ng ating mga mamamayan ay tagasunod lamang.
The war was over in 1918, but in the Philippines, the good times were still on, with copra and sugar prices still rising in the world market.
In order to meet the need for raw materials for American refineries and industries, selected products like sugar, then copra, then abaca, and then eventually coconut oil were encouraged. And these 4 products were the foundations of Philippine export trade to the U.S. Very prosperous yan. So that is why we have our richest families, especially up to the outbreak of World War II, were the hacenderos.
The sugar barons were building their wedding cake mansions all over Iloilo and Pampanga and Negros. If the Visayans had the Kahiro to spotlight their tiaras, the Pampangos had the Mancomunidad to showcase their diamonds. As elegant but supposedly more cultured was the elite that southern Tagalog was producing in Pagsanghan, Lipa, and San Pablo. With 1920 began the jazz era that made Asia Pinoy conscious. We were the first in the Orient to master jazz, and all through pre-World War II times, it was our singers, our dancers and jazz bands that monopolized the bandstands from India to Java. We had also become so expert in baseball, we could dare send teams to compete on American diamonds. And our flyweights and welterweights were making the Philippines the boxing capital of the Far East, especially after the brief but brilliant career of Pancho Villa, the flyweight champion of the world.
We have no bananas. We have no...
But did we have a lot of bonanzas throughout the roaring 20s? The Zarzuela peaked with the advent of its greatest star, Atang de la Rama. We made it to world opera when Isang Tapales sang Madame Butterfly in Europe. Vaudeville turned Manila into Broadway with such dazzling entertainers as Dimples Cooper, Katie de la Cruz, Vicente Ocampo, and Ping, the king of jazz.
It's a proof of the versatility of the Filipino artist, but to say that that is an achievement for the development of Philippine arts and culture is very questionable.
Alas, the 1930s began in America with the richest people on earth crying over their losses. The Great Depression had begun. But the cry in the Philippines was gold. Scores of mining companies mushroomed at the Crystal Arcade on the Escolta, but not a single spade was sunk in the ground, and so-called gold profits were only paper profits. The gold rush was a wild goose chase. But then, the 1930s was swing time for us, the era of the Carioca, the Big Apple, the Boogie Woogie, the Jam Session, the Jitterbug, the Oomph Girl, the Glamour Boy, and the NCAA games that were making basketball a national obsession. But we were making history too. Independence came a step nearer in 1934.